I said in a recent podcast, because I'm really critical of AI art, I can't stand the stuff. And I was saying, okay, well, I'm not worried yet. The minute I get worried is when the Boston Dynamic robot picks up the brush and starts doing that. And then I see in your reel, it's like, oh no, they actually did it. They actually did it. Let's jump in right there. Give me your views on what's going on and this relatively new occurrence here of AI image generation and now AI painting.
You know, this is very nuanced, and obviously, a lot of people would call us fear mongers, that we are just technophobes and just old school knuckleheads who don't really believe in technology, and they would equate it to perhaps when Nadar came out with the camera and everyone was like, oh my God, the camera is going to take over everything. And you saw people like Anwar Domier, one of my favorite illustrators of all time, who's making fun of all of that, like, and people who are ridiculing it because there was a lot of fear that it was going to be replaced. And guess what? A lot of it was replaced. A lot of editorial illustration was replaced by photography. Advertising illustration was replaced by photography. It displaced. There's a lot of things that displaced, J.C. Leyendecker and Rockwell, but certainly the camera helped. Saturday Evening Post had a beautiful charm when Norman Rockwell was painting it, but once the camera came in, everything changed. And that would be the same for artists like Sunbloom, who did, Quaker Oats and, all of these iconic early American illustrations. Now, what did we do as artists? We pivoted, right? We became more concerned with creative stuff that the camera couldn't do. A lot of artists started to paint out of their imagination, and they weren't relying so much on life, like a Cornwell or a Leyendecker or a Rockwell, and they were able to survive and create a new genre. Now, Photoshop comes along years later. We're in the animation world. My best friend's at Disney, and people are painting traditionally. They're copying backgrounds with cell paint. And what happens? Photoshop, in about 3 to 5 years from my graduation date, which is 95, about late 90s, it starts becoming pretty prevalent, pretty dominant. And now it's like, oh, you're not working at Sony, Disney, DreamWorks without knowing Photoshop. And the traditional painting, sure, it's a great thing to learn, but Photoshop is, and we know Photoshop is so completely, profoundly deep, right? It's such a
Mm-hmm.
deep program because you've
Oh
got
yeah.
millions of people working on the tech
Mm-hmm.
and artists, et cetera, and so on. So Photoshop comes in and does displace a lot of people. And so artists have to pivot and learn it. They have to know it. Now, the artists that paint better, when I did my TV show, I hired artists. I did a show called Urbania on Comedy Central. It was an animated TV show, and I was hiring artists who were mostly traditionally trained because we knew that the pivot for them with Photoshop would be easier than a Photoshop person pivoting to learn painting. Painting is a lifetime to learn.
Oh yeah.
Photoshop is not, it's a tool. But
Yeah.
it did
Right.
come in and to take over. Okay, so now fast forward to 2024, we're at the stage of AI. This is a little different, and I'm not being paranoid. I'm being very honest here. I'm thinking as an artist, but I'm also thinking as a businessman. You know, Not I'm trying not to think as an erudite, but like a real thinking person. You're seeing AI is starting to do stuff very fast that is doing it
Mm-hmm.
on their own. It's not a tool anymore. It's becoming, in a certain way, autonomously creative. Now, what do I mean by that? Yes, we know that Midjourney and Dolly can't really do hands well. They're not doing the Bern Hogarth hands. The hands are still messed up. The faces are off. There's some things that are off, but there's some things they're doing really, really well. One of them is backgrounds. That's what I've noticed.
Mm.
I was a big, I was a big, production design for movies. Um, Before I just did a movie with Gore Verbinski, who directed Rango and Pirates of the Caribbean. So I know the people in the space, I know the fears, and I know what's really happening from an inside track. And what's really happening is it is doing the job well with backgrounds, with different environments. It's hard to think about hiring a team of artists maybe one artist or two artists who are prompting, but then you can let some of these programs, especially if you have guys who know what they're doing, kind of churn out stuff. And it's getting better all the time. The more we feed the machine, the more the machine eats, the easier it is. I mean, what we're seeing right now with ChatGPT 4, this is nothing. This is like it was kindergarten and high school. Now it's PhD professor at UCLA level. Eventually, it'll be like super genius. It'll have the brain capacity of an Einstein, every one of them, and everyone will have access to that. So I think it is dangerous because it is going to take away a certain amount of creative jobs. That's a weird thing. And so my best friend Ruben Hickman, he's a phenomenal production designer. He's worked on every freaking movie.
Mm.
In my opinion, he's the best production designer in animation in Hollywood. For me, he's afraid. He's seeing what it's doing. At first, it was like, it'll never, that'll be the last. It'll be like the last place where it's going to attack us. I mean, journalism, forget it. Like, they're done in terms of like, ChatGPT does an amazing job.
Right.
Now we know it's aggregating, right? There's a lot of cutting and pasting, but it's getting better all the time. And I think what I saw yesterday was really frightening because I put out a lot of these robots. Essentially, it's like a printer, right? It's not like
Oh,
like
yeah.
the graffiti one I put out. It's like,
Yeah.
first of all, it's a horrible painting it's doing. Secondly, it's really just a printer, like it's an oversized
Yeah.
printer.
Yeah.
But I did see something yesterday where this guy who was an engineer painted a robot. I mean, had a robot do a painting, and it was really good. I was like kind of like a little bit weirded out.
Mm.
Now we've had limited edition G clay printers, we've had printers, we've had all kinds of technology, but I feel like it is a very dangerous place because there's nothing we can do about it.
Mm.
And I don't know if there is a pivot, right? Other than like, okay, so for me, I'm Justin Bua. I'm 56 years old. I've been doing this my whole life. Like, people are going to buy a Bua because I'm Justin Bua. But what if Justin Bua was a 20-year-old again and I had to become Justin Bua?
Oh, wow.
People might not want to buy my stuff as much, right? They know me, they know my work, they want to feel the touch of my personal art. And people can argue with me all day, all night. I will tell you, I'm talking to some of the biggest creatives who are open to technology, and I think everybody is scared shitless. And we thought art was the last bastion of creativity that wouldn't be infiltrated by the machine. And I think
Mm.
we're wrong. I think it's coming. I don't, it's going to take time, but as long as businessmen are at the top of the food chain, which they usually are in all of these, whether it's TV, film, or, let's be real, Sotheby's, Christie's, I think that they're going to change the workforce, and there's going to be less positions for working artists. Is there a pivot? I'm sure there is. I don't know what it is, man. That's the truth. I don't know what the pivot is.